Hello and welcome to Alchemy 101, the show that explores all avenues of transformation and aims to offer some useful nuggets that can support us in living in line with nature in a way that's true to our nature, no matter how contrary that might seem, just like this nightingale, the bird that sings out in the dark. I'm JJ, the Practical Alchemist, and I'm delighted you could join me today. We're talking nutrition and natural supplements with another wonderful guest, someone who's developed a great well-being brand. Now, have you ever despaired at having to buy a whole load of supplements separately to deal with an issue that you might have, and then having a whole bunch of bottles or packets taking up space in your kitchen or bathroom and looking really untidy? I know I have. And it's something my guest, Aliza Magory, was well attuned to when she launched her supplements brand, Inessa. Her intention was to combine a range of helpful supplements in one capsule, which she did. But that's not the only way her brand differs from other supplements, as you'll hear as she tells us all about it. I started our chat by pointing out that a lot of well-being businesses were born out of someone overcoming a health issue and then deciding to help others. So I asked how Inessa came about.
So I'm no different. And actually my whole class, when I was studying, everyone was kind of sharing stories about how we'd come to kind of want to learn about nutrition or other holistic therapies. And so for myself, I was diagnosed with an autoimmune condition called ulcerative colitis. I was diagnosed when I was 18 years old, just as I was heading off to university. And I didn't really know what it was. It wasn't really explained to me what it was. But I'd been misdiagnosed from around the age of 14. So I'd had symptoms for years that had been kind of passed off as kind of IBS type symptoms. And so by the time I got my diagnosis, I was actually really, really poorly. And my disease state was quite aggressive. And as a result, I had to be treated quite heavily with steroids, like very high dose steroids and immunosuppressant drugs as well. So unfortunately, like many people, I had quite severe side effects from those medications. But they are, in some cases, they are necessary to try and get the disease into remission.
Yeah.
And I wasn't getting any better. I think things have changed. I know things have changed now. So there are more medications that are available. This was over 22 years ago now. So we're kind of, it was a long time ago and medications were fairly basic. And because I wasn't getting any better, I was in and out of hospital all the time. And one of the side effects that I had from the maintenance drug that I was supposed to be on for life was hair loss, which wasn't taken very seriously at first. But you can imagine, hair loss is difficult for women anyway, because a lot of our identity is and femininity is tied up in hair. Like, that's how kind of society has kind of conditioned us to feel about hair. And as a teenager, that was really quite tough. And at that point, it was a dermatologist who basically pulled one strand of hair and it came clean out. And he said, you're not going to have any hair if you don't kind of sort this out, if you don't kind of come off the medication in the next 6 weeks, you'll be bald. And at that point, I was like, okay, this is not acceptable because it's not making me well. And it's causing all of these side effects, amongst many others as well. And he was great. So he actually wrote to my gastroenterologist and said, seen this girl in clinic. She's having a reaction to medication. It was quite a rare reaction to medication at the time. I think I was the 36th person to have it reported. I remember. It's funny how you remember those details.
Yeah, you do, don't you?
And he said, if the medication is not working for her, I suggest you wean her off. And my gastroenterologist did agree with that. And he said, look, we'll take you off the maintenance drug, but I think the next step is going to be life-changing surgery, especially if it doesn't calm down in the next few months. So that would have been kind of bowel removal or kind of having a stoma. And all of that kind of, as a young girl came as a bit of a shock. And especially since people didn't really talk about those kinds of illnesses, and I was the only kind of person in my kind of friendship group and in my class that had anything any sort of illness that kind of might, it might impact on quality of life at the time. And so I asked my gastroenterologist in that meeting, I said, is there anything dietary that I can change or that might be making things worse? And he said, well, we've got no evidence for anything yet apart from lactose. So we know that lactose can be a trigger for some people, can worsen symptoms for some people. So if you want to try taking that out of your diet, you're welcome to. But, we are going to be talking about surgery in the next few months. I will see you in 2 weeks' time for your next appointment.
Wow. Okay.
And I went away and I thought to myself, well, if one food group has been shown or can actually have an impact on IBD, then there must be something else, or there must be other foods, or even alcohol. Like you're thinking about, I was at university, people are drinking and on a, when they're out and about. And I thought to myself, there must be other things that kind of are having an impact. And so I went on the internet, which was very, very slow.
I remember those days.
It was really new. You remember how slow it was to load every page. It was just so different to how it is now. And there really wasn't very much on there, apart from a few forums that I found in the US. And so I kind of started trawling through those forums and to see, what were other patients saying, what had they tried, what was working for them, what was not working for them. And I really didn't know very much about kind of supplements or anything at that time, but there were some things in there that I thought, okay, those are interesting. And so I started kind of making some changes to my diet, trying some of the things that people had recommended, doing the sorts of things that now, as a qualified nutritionist, I would never advise you to do. Do not go on the internet, find things to go and try and hope that they work, because it's not a safe way to kind of manage your health. But I was young and I didn't really know any better, and I was also desperate. So that's where I ended up going. But I was also being monitored by my gastroenterologist throughout the whole of that period. And to cut a very long story short, within 3 months, by the time we were kind of coming to have that conversation about, having bowel removal surgery, basically we didn't have that conversation then, because I'd already stabilized, and my symptoms were kind of not great, but they were stable.
Yeah.
And over the course of a year to my next full colonoscopy, I was being monitored, and I wasn't on any medication at that point, and I was gradually getting better. And so in the end, we never ended up having the conversation about bowel removal surgery, because I never ended up having to go down that route. And when I had my colonoscopy, almost a year to the day when I started kind of tweaking diets, trying supplements to see what would work, what wouldn't work, I ended up confirmed in full remission for the first time in years. And, obviously I was absolutely delighted. It was something that I kind of felt, okay, I can start enjoying university again in a way where I wasn't able to. My consultant was really happy for me, but he said to me, that this is not going to hold, and we are going to have to, if you're not able to take medication, not able to respond to medication, then we're going to have to talk about surgery at some point down the line. Many years later, he ended up doing a lot of research into the link between diet and inflammatory bowel disease, and also in supplements and the impact on inflammatory bowel disease. I read his research. I found it fascinating, and things have moved on since then. So we now know that for Crohn's disease is the sister disease to ulcerative colitis. For people with Crohn's and ulcerative colitis, that diet does have an impact, as does lifestyle, for everything for disease management and to kind of maintaining remission, and helping to kind of to induce remission in those who don't actually do as well as hoped on some of the medications. Although medications have changed a lot today, so you've got, you do have a lot more to try, and kind of to try and reduce your risk of having to have surgery. And for me now, as a practitioner, as a qualified practitioner, I feel that you have to look at both. You have to look at medication, medical management of disease, and you also have to look at diet and lifestyle, because they work better in combination. And your chance of going into remission is much higher if you're also, looking after yourself physically, and kind of putting the right things into your body. And sometimes supplements can have a really important role in helping, particularly to maintain remission. They can be really helpful. So that's how I ended up moving into the kind of nutrition industry myself and studying, because I thought to myself, if I can do that for myself, I want to do it for other people. I want to be able to help other people to hopefully take a little bit more control over their own health, particularly where medication is not working for them.
Yeah, love it, which is where I'm coming from. You saw my eyebrows raise when you were telling us about how the consultant was saying, we've still got to think about surgery. I think, please, let's not go down that route. But I think things have changed these days, haven't they?
Yeah.
We're not so hell-bent on surgery to solve everything. It's great to know that actually that particular doctor has done a lot of research now, so and knows the condition better. But I also agree with you. I have a friend of mine recently was complaining they've got a heart problem, and they were complaining that they'd been in hospital because they'd had another angina attack and they were saying, I've got to take all these things and I don't want to. I want to go down the natural route. I said, well, do you want to be here or not?
Yes, right.
Basically, I think sometimes, and I am an all natural girl, right? I can't even take over the counter drugs. I'll swell up like a balloon because they set off my histamine issues. But if it means that it helps you get better, then yes, I get it.
Of course.
It's like you say, sometimes you need both. Sometimes you need to just have something to push you up that notch so that you can actually go down the natural route. But of course, prevention is always better than cure. But anyway, that's
of course.
That kind of takes us on to what you're doing now in terms of your business.
So I was in clinical practice for full time for over 7 years. I've been in that industry now for a good 15 years, it was during my time in clinical practice that I kind of you get to know and you get to understand the supplements industry, how the benefits of supplements, which ones are good, which ones are not so great. And at the time, particularly when I launched Inessa as a supplements brand, there were some really nice quality products. They're practitioner brands, but they were only available via practitioner. So you either had to be able to, first of all, afford to go and see a nutrition professional in order to get access to those, and the other thing is they were very expensive as well, because they're high quality, they're very expensive. And they're, you can combine lots of different things. You can get like a really high quality B complex that's very bioavailable, your body can utilize well, versus something you might buy at the supermarket, like a supermarket own brand one, which, is very cheap, and perhaps is not as bioavailable, but also doesn't have therapeutic dosing or doses that kind of have been shown to be effective. And I thought to myself, well, this doesn't seem really fair, because like you can get access to these amazing products, but you have to see a clinician first in order to do it. So it would be nice if we could actually get those in front of, other people that might want access to them. And of course, things have changed since then, because a lot of those brands are now going direct to consumer themselves. So, the world has changed since I launched with our first product. But that was my first line of thinking. And then the other thing is that, and this conversation was really the thing that really kind of made me think I'm going to go and do this, was I was working with a really lovely client who had eczema from top to toe, and she'd had it from birth, and she was in her, I think, late 20s, early 30s. And she came to me and she said, nothing has worked for me, and it's really awful, and it's, I'm not happy with the way things are. And I said to her, look, let's give it a shot. We can do some diet and lifestyle stuff and see how you go. I think that we can improve this, at least not necessarily cure it, but we can improve it. And within about 6 months, she was completely clear. Her eczema had completely cleared up, and she also had identified dietary triggers that kind of were setting things off for her. So she was able to manage that herself, which was great. And she was also using 5 separate supplements. So your omega-3, like zinc and selenium for skin cell turnover, the various other things that she was using to help to support the health of her skin. And I remember her saying to me, these are working really well for me, because when she ran out, things would flare up again a bit more. But she said, I wish someone would just put them all into one, so I didn't have to take so many different things every day. And you run out of things and you forget to kind of rebuy them, etc.
Yeah.
And I joked with her and I said, well, maybe one day I will. And that was just, it stuck with me. And I kept thinking to myself, oh, I wish, wouldn't it be so much easier if we could get combinations of anti-inflammatories together, and kind of, all the things that I would use separately with someone with an inflammatory condition, I can kind of put that in for one, or, put a B complex in with your chromium for blood sugar balance, and vitamin D in a relevant dose, and put that all into one as well. And about a year later, I thought to myself, I'm going to go and give this a go. This is what I wish would be in my first product, which was the advanced multivitamin that we sell. And I thought that would combine all of the things that this particular lady was taking, but also it just replaces having to take lots of different separate supplements for the average person as well, and all in therapeutic doses. So you don't have to buy a separate vitamin D to top up what's in your multivitamin. Actually, the transition into manufacturing I didn't feel it was that hard, because I'd been in the industry for such a long time that I knew people on the manufacturing side. I knew people at all the kind of practitioner brand nutraceutical companies. I knew people there that were happy to kind of talk and share. And I ended up finding an amazing laboratory in the UK that kind of helped get that very first product to market. I worked with an incredible biochemist who'd had over 30 years experience in the supplement industry, and basically he can help kind of work out from my wish list what is actually physically possible, what is what is viable within the industry, and how much you can get into pills and what you can't get into pills, and what needs to go in and what reacts with what. And so he could actually kind of turn that wish list into a reality. And obviously, I had lab technicians to work alongside as well, who helped on that side. And that very first product took ages to develop, because no one else had actually made it before, not in the doses and because you've got volume to think about, the volume of the nutrients you're putting in. How are you going to put them into one? And up to the point where I got to the lab that we ended up working with, I'd spoken to another few who all said, you can't get that volume of nutrients into one pill. You're going to have to do it across the same size pill, but you need to do it over 3. And I thought, well, that's not what I want to do. I want to make it into one. There must be a way to make this happen. And actually, the lab that we ended up working with, they can calibrate machines in a certain way to actually make that happen and make that work. And that's how my very first product was made.
We consumers do tend to forget all about the hoops manufacturers have to jump through, don't we? And isn't it great that Aliza persevered? Well, hold that thought for now, because it's time to take a short break to hear from our station sponsors. Back right after this.
UK Health Radio, the station that makes you feel good. UK Health Radio, the station that makes you feel good.
And you're listening to Alchemy 101 here on UK Health Radio with me, JJ, the Practical Alchemist, and my guest, Aliza Magory, founder of the Inessa supplement brand. One of the things that I rail against when it comes to supplements is the use of fillers, something that Inessa products don't have.
No, there's no space. There's no space, because normally we're kind of whittling down this giant wish list of things that I would like to put into something. So there is no space, unfortunately. We're basically just packed. Everything that's in there is at the limit of what you can get. So that we don't use fillers for our products. And I think, some cheaper brands will do it because the dosing's lower and they need to fill the rest of the capsule, so they will do that. But for us, we're so busy trying to pack lots and lots of things in that there's no room for fillers. And sometimes you'll sit there at the end and go, oh, I wish we could add in something else. It's just there's no way. And actually,
your technicians say, no, get this woman away from us. Yeah.
It's quite funny because I've been running Inessa now as a supplement brand for for about 5 years now, and I've become quite friendly with the team at the lab. And now we have 2 labs as a result of COVID. Actually, we decided to split production across 2 laboratories in case one had to shut,
Okay,
and
good
the other
idea.
one kind of remained over. Yeah, and you kind of have to, especially as an independent business. You're never top of the line. You're never going to be as, like, in terms of manufacturing. You're not going to, no kind of manufacturing facility is going to turn down a big business kind of opportunity from, say, Boots or wherever,
Exactly.
and run ours earlier because they've had, because they've had to close due to COVID or whatever. So now we split manufacturing over 2 facilities, and one of the directors from our first facility said, when I first turned up and sat there and said, I want to make this multivitamin with all of these things in it, he said, we all thought you were mad. We thought you basically came in, you wanted to make a product that is so expensive to manufacture that there are products out there in market that sell for less than the manufacturing cost of the ingredients that you wanted to put together, and you had no brand equity. No one knew who on earth you were. Like, you had no
But you had the dream.
I had the dream, but also I knew that if it was something that I wanted as a practitioner to work with in practice, that I knew that there would be other people out there that also would benefit from it. So I thought to myself, I'm going to give it a shot and try it. And we made a very small initial order to start with, because obviously I couldn't afford to. We were self-funded. We were an independent brand. I started it with, a few £1,000s of personal savings, and that was it. And have grown it kind of year on year. Brilliant. Organically.
Yeah.
And yeah. So that's how I got started with that side of things.
It's a great story. It really is. And it's a great example of how you can actually achieve anything if you really put your mind to it. And, you just hold the dream and say, no, this is what I want. How can we do it? Rather than, oh, you can't do that. No.
Yeah.
How can we make it possible? Fantastic. I think that's wonderful. Talking about no fillers, but I really, more and more these days, I personally will not take anything that's got fillers in, bulking agents, anything like that. I'm not up for that at all anymore. Maybe in the past I hadn't thought that much about it, but I really do now. So it's great to see companies like yours coming along and offering that kind of service. Let's talk a little bit about the product. You don't have a big range. So there is not a big range of products, but what you do have tends to cover all areas, as it were. As you say, it's a one-stop shop. You talked about the one that you developed, the first one that you developed. So what is that, and who would take that?
Yeah. So actually, on the point that you make about the range being small, that was always intentional. There are a few other things that I'm planning on adding to the range, because I think that we've got a bit of a gap on some things, things for like kind of specifically for sleep and stress and anxiety that kind of go beyond just magnesium, like those kind of things. Children's products, I think, are kind of really lacking in quality at the moment from what's available in market. So I really struggle as a parent myself to find products that I feel really comfortable with giving my son. But actually, having looked into it, I can understand why it's so difficult to develop a high quality children's product, but I am determined to do it. So there will be a way to get around it. Watch this space. There will be a way to do it. But on the range being kind of quite small, I kind of designed everything to be, where possible, a multitasker. So, for example, that advanced multivitamin is really good for a whole range of kind of things that, as a practitioner or other clinicians might be working with, because it's completely unique in market in that it's got 100 milligrams of CoQ10 in there, which is great for heart health, really good for energy production, particularly if you're like over 30. Our natural levels of CoQ10 tend to get lower, but also just like it's been shown to help to reduce kind of risk of heart disease and heart issues. So it's really good for all age groups, but actually I would say our age demographic tends to be from about 30 all the way up to people in their 90s. Like it's quite a wide range of people that kind of come to us for products, but it completely replaces like a B complex and like a zinc in a therapeutic dose and a vitamin D3. It's like it's got 2000 IU of vitamin D3 in it. It's got really kind of good ingredients in the same quality and forms that you get in the separates that you'd buy from some of those kind of practitioner brand companies, but it's all combined into one. So you can use it for hormonal balance. Like we get lots and lots of women coming to us with either kind of perimenopause symptoms or even just kind of PMS symptoms, and they'll come and they'll use the product because their practitioners said use a B complex, use a zinc, use like other kind of nutrients that are in there. But for perimenopause in particular, and for menopause as well, fatigue is like one symptom that a lot of women complain about, and because it's got kind of very good doses of B vitamins and the CoQ10 in there, it's really good for that. So we get a lot of really good feedback. It's also deliberately not got iron in it because not everyone needs to supplement with iron. It can be quite dangerous for people to supplement with iron.
Yeah. And you don't need it as you get older either, I think. Is that right? Yeah.
No, that is absolutely correct. So like a lot of older people don't need to and shouldn't be taking iron.
Yeah.
So if you have a specific need for iron, always say, of course, you should be taking a separate iron, but you should have that kind of confirmed on a blood test. It shouldn't be just assumed that you need to be taking iron, because that can be unsafe. So that's that product. The BioSoothe product, which is my favorite, which is the anti-inflammatory product that we developed. Like it has lots of different anti-inflammatory ingredients that have been shown to help to modulate and kind of excess inflammation and to support healthy inflammatory processes, and that one that's the one that we get the most life-changing feedback on. That we do get emails coming through that just I can't tell you how happy they make myself and the team. Just people who've said, either with inflammatory bowel disease like myself, who said I went and I tried this with permission from my doctor, and I no longer have to have surgery, or I've been able to reduce my medication, which is really great. People with arthritis, because it works systemically, so it starts its action in the gut, and then it kind of modulates inflammation throughout the body. So people with arthritis, inflammatory arthritis, they've benefited from it as well. People with psoriasis have said that they've benefited from it as well. So it is a multitasker. It's intentionally designed to kind of have ingredients that work on slightly different inflammatory pathways, combine those together, and then you get, a good effect. So they are multitaskers, and obviously we've got kind of some of the single nutrients like an omega-3, because that can be paired well with the anti-inflammatory, and it can be paired well with the multivitamin. But everything's in there in a therapeutic dose. We don't put anything in just for the sake of putting it in. So like, for example, lots of multivitamin products you'll see have a teeny tiny bit of magnesium in it, or a tiny bit of calcium in it to make it look complete. But the amounts that you can get into a tablet along with everything else are so small that they don't make any difference to your health. So I feel that's misleading, and that's why we've avoided going down that route. And
I've often wondered, I've often wondered about that, because you see these amounts on the list on the side of a bottle, and you think, is that, and actually, if you're not a professional, you often think to yourself, well, I don't even know what that means, right? But there are these trace amounts almost, it seems, in some of these preparations. Yeah. And I've often wondered as to the efficacy of them. Yeah.
If they're not high enough to kind of even meet your kind of minimum daily requirements for a nutrient, they're not going to do anything. Like it's just in there to make you feel like you're taking that nutrient. And for some people that's fine, but for other people who might potentially think, I'm taking magnesium and calcium, it's in my multivitamin, there won't be enough in there to support your bone health, for example, if that's why you're taking it. You'll need to have it in separates, which is why when you get calcium tablets from the doctor, if you've got osteoporosis, they're huge tablets that you kind of have to chew.
Course pills.
Yes, they are. It's because the molecular volume of those ingredients is really high.
It is really interesting, actually. And I did start taking the BioSoothe of yours, and the reason I started it was because I looked at the ingredients and I thought, that will save a whole load of bottles on my tabletop there. How fantastic to just have it in one, and
that's the whole point.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It was just like genius. Why has nobody thought of doing this before?
And so I'm so glad that you see it from the perspective that it's meant to be done. That's why we've done it, to reduce the number of pills. I don't like taking pills myself. Like I forget to take pills. I don't like having to take lots and lots of them. So being able to cut them down just does make all the difference. And actually, from a compliance perspective, when you're working with a client, it's actually much easier, because then they have less pills to take.
Yeah.
It's also much more cost effective. Like, it's so much cheaper than buying the exact same equivalent ingredients separately. So, for example, going back to the lady that had the eczema, when she started off, she was taking, I think it was about five products, and they added up to about £150 a month, maybe £120 a month. I can't remember exactly. Yeah. And which is not unusual for people to be spending that much on kind of decent quality supplements.
No, it's not. I would imagine. And
now she takes the one multivitamin pill, and that's less than £30 a month. Less than £30 for 2 months supply. So it's like less than £30 for the bottle, but it's for 2 months supply. And she takes one of our omega-3s alongside it. It's so much cheaper and so much easier for her to take, rather than taking all of those separates. And I have wondered the same thing as you. I've wondered, why has no one done this before? Why has no one actually combined those ingredients together and done that? And the only thing that I can think of is, if you're a very big brand and a very big kind of corporate brand, why would you kind of cut your sales down? Why would you reduce the amount of money that you're making?
It's got to be money. It's got to be money involved in there. Yeah. But I think it's a really good service, because as I said, in the BioSoothes that you've made, I looked down the ingredients list and I thought, oh my God, so I can just take one thing. Because I think, there was a whole load of things in there that I was buying separately. And the joy that I felt was quite extraordinary. ridiculously so. But you do.
That makes me really happy. That makes that. So see, I love that. I love that that the product is being understood, and it's actually made your life easier. And that's what I set out to do.
Absolutely. And as I said, keeping down the clutter as well, because you'd have all these packets or bottles on my kitchen table, and you think, I just want to clear all that out. Now I don't need to have so much, which is great. That might sound pathetic to some people listening, but it's things that make your life better, make your life easier. Small things really count sometimes. But you do have single supplements, and I want to talk about magnesium as well, because there is an issue generally with magnesium and the deficiency of that a lot of people have. But you also have a couple of gut biome preparations, I guess you might say, probiotics. And one of them is very wide ranging. And again, I don't think I've seen on the market any probiotic that is so wide ranging. You've got an awful lot of different strains in there, which is very unusual, I think.
So actually, on that probiotic, so that's the biotic complex that we make. That one was initially designed to basically combine the strains of live bacteria that have been shown to help with reduction of inflammation, and also to help with supporting kind of gut health as a whole. And the reason why I pulled that all together was, when I was working in clinic, I would often end up buying a separate kind of separates for those specific strains, and it was very expensive, very difficult. And then in the end, you really end up kind of going, okay, just take 3 of these strains, because it's really difficult to kind of take, and very expensive to take all of those separately. So we've combined all of those well-researched strain. And one of the things that we've done, and we were the first to do it in the UK, in fact, I think it might have been worldwide, was to include Saccharomyces boulardii, which is a non-pathogenic probiotic yeast. And that's really well researched, and it also has been shown to help with everything from traveler's diarrhea. So if you get a kind of bacterial infection, it can help to kind of clear that through quickly. It helps with like all sorts of things, but it's also it's unusual, and it's one of the things that we worked with as practitioners really early on for kind of gut upset, and we used to buy it separately, and you used to buy this 5 billion live kind of strain product previously, and I used to pay about £20 for it, and I thought, okay, well, let's just chuck 5 billion in because I can. Like, I can. It's quite fun to be able to do all of these things, and it's actually really nice to be able to work from a practitioner and a patient perspective, because I work from the perspective of having been the patient myself, but also from having worked with kind of clients who might be using these products. So I understand both sides. I understand the challenges of manufacturing, of which, you know, there are many, and also I understand what customers are looking for, because I've been there and I've worked with those people. So that's one thing that I think that does set us apart from a lot of the other brands that are out there. I'm working from a kind of the user perspective as well.
And that's a real gift, to have someone create a health product from the perspectives of both healthcare professional and patient. Now, time for us to take another short break right now, but back with more after this from our station sponsors.
UK Health Radio, the station that makes you feel good. UK Health Radio, the station that makes you feel good.
And you're listening to Alchemy 101 on UK Health Radio and the UK Health Radio podcast with me, JJ, the Practical Alchemist, and my guest today, Aliza Magory, who founded the supplement brand Inessa. Now, getting back to probiotics, I mentioned that a lot of people don't fully understand them, and many think that just eating a live yogurt every day is a cure-all.
Well, I mean, the effects of there are countless. We don't even know how many different types of live bacteria there are. We've not even isolated all of those, but the ones that have been studied and shown to have different effects within the body. Yeah. And so that's why if you have a specific health concern, specific types of bacteria can have a benefit. Whereas if you're having a live yogurt, of course that's helpful, of course that's beneficial to us, but it's not going to have the same effect if you've got, for example, lactobacillus rhamnosus. We've talked about that before. LGG, so lactobacillus rhamnosus GG, that's the full name. So that one's been really well studied in skin issues. So it's been shown to help with eczema. It's also been studied and shown to help with to support immunity, particularly in children. So all of them act slightly differently, and it's kind of knowing which strains to work with that have an impact, you know, on a specific health need, rather than just kind of, you know, live yogurt or fermented foods, which are super important. They are incredibly important, and if you incorporate them into your diet, then that's great. That's a really nice natural way of getting probiotics. And I also don't think that everyone needs to take probiotics. I think you only need them if you've got a specific health need. You should be getting, you should be nurturing your gut microbiome via diet where possible. So increasing diversity of the plant foods that you eat, that's been shown to be really, really crucial to kind of helping to maintain a healthy microbiome. And, you know, fermented foods and kind of things like yogurt are, you know, part of that as well. But not everyone needs to take a probiotic. It's just, you know, when you do take one, you shouldn't just be, you know, you might not benefit from just taking just anything, any specific strain that you might have just picked up off the shelf.
Yes, and I think that's where people get confused, because, you know, we're told so often that, you know, live yogurt is so very good for you, which it is. You know, things like kombucha, kraut, you know, raw kraut, fermented cabbage, it's very good for you, which it is. Mixing all of those up in your diet are extremely good for you. However, they're not necessarily going to rectify something that's going on in your gut, because it might not be the right culture to do that. It might not be the right thing. Yeah. So I guess then the advice would be to go and see a specialist, somebody like you who can actually identify what might be going on and what might be the better strains to take. Yeah.
And actually some doctors are starting to get really interested in that area as well. So we actually have, we've had a lot of doctors over the past 2 years, I would say, that have started coming to us and asking for more information about our products, either because one of their own patients has come to them and said, I've been using this product and it's really helped me. So it's piqued their interest and they've gone, okay, I want to learn a little bit more about that. But I think that looking at health as a whole is becoming much more mainstream now. So they're looking at diet, and they're looking at, possibly using supplements in some cases. And I think that's great personally. It's just, it's a change. And I think it's a shift in the way that modern medicine is working, to look at, obviously the amazing tools that we have that are life-saving, as part of the kind of mainstream medical system, but also looking at diet and lifestyle and how important that is to actually maintain health. And, like you said earlier, prevention is better than the cure. So they're starting to work from that perspective too.
Yeah, which is very, very welcome. And then you also have a supplement, a magnesium supplement. Now, magnesium may well be one of those things which people tend to forget about or not think about, but it is hugely important, and a lot of us are deficient in magnesium, aren't we?
Yeah, and I've read, you read various stats coming out from various different bodies about magnesium deficiency, and the one that really sticks out for me is that it's thought that in the US, around 50%, and I read stats that are high, around 50% of Americans do not meet their daily requirement for magnesium. It won't be very different over here. But that's, a significant proportion of the population that are not getting enough magnesium. And there are several reasons for that. So it's a really important mineral. It's naturally present in the earth. And so we get it through our food, because when we grow our food in the soil, like that gets, the magnesium and all the nutrients that are in the soil kind of become present in the food that we eat. So it's thought that some of the change might be to do with modern farming methods. So use of different pesticides. I'm not a farmer, so I don't know anything. I don't know all the specifics, but this is what I've read about the actual about the farming side of things, is that the changes in the topsoil have had an impact on on how nutrient dense some of our food is today, and the fact that we kind of, we intensively farm in the way that we didn't used to. So that's one thing. But one of probably the biggest reason why we probably don't get enough magnesium through our diet is the fact that we eat more processed foods than we used to. So that's one thing. Because processing food removes a lot of that nutrient and other nutrients as well, lots of other trace minerals, and stress. So a lot of us operate under a lot of stress, and stress depletes magnesium because it's used to make a lot of our stress hormones are made from magnesium. And so that's another reason why we might be deficient as well. But I do think it's our processed foods that we're eating through our diet, and all the shift towards that more processed foods has had the biggest impact on our magnesium intake. So even things like, just whole grains naturally contain lots of magnesium, but if you're having white rice, you don't have that kind of level of nutrients that you would have in the brown rice. Same with bread, the way that our bread is processed, all of those things have an impact. And magnesium's kind of very, you have it in lots of foods. You have it in all the whole grains I mentioned, dark green leafy veg, like plant foods essentially are the kind of richest. Nuts, seeds, some legumes as well. They all contain magnesium, but a lot of those, when we eat them, are processed. They've been through processing. You have them in a can. You might have baked beans, for example, in a can, and those are beans, but they've been processed. So it's just
exactly
all of those things kind of deplete they reduce the quality of our food, for want of a better phrase. So that's one thing. And so we were actually getting asked by our customers. We have really lovely customers that many of them have been long-standing, who quite often, they'll feedback to us, but they'll also ask us specifically for things. And they kept asking for magnesium. And I've always said to myself, if we can't add anything to the market, there's absolutely no point in us doing it, because first of all, it would be really difficult for us to actually kind of get in front of customers and to even sell the product. And also, why make something that everyone else is doing? There's just no point. There are lots and lots of actually really good reputable brands that make magnesium products. So why would you not go and buy from them? And initially, my lovely nutrition team would, when we get those inquiries, they would refer out. And actually, that's one thing that I do think we do well. So when people come to us and they're asking about products for for a specific wellness goal or health need, if our team feel that they don't have a good fit, that we don't have a good fit for them, or the product that they're inquiring about isn't quite right for them, we will refer out. We refer out to other companies, or we tell them, you don't need this product. You just, it's not going to fix you. This is not the right thing for you. And I think that because we've been so honest about that, and we don't sell for the sake of selling, that's kind of helped us build a bit of a reputation amongst a customer base that have then gone on to recommend us to other people. The nutrition team are really highly qualified, both of them that do the calls, the free 10-minute calls that we offer. Both of them have over 5 years clinical experience. They're not just straight out of school and just selling supplements. They're there to kind of, Inessa started off as a clinical practice. So Inessa Wellness, which is the URL, which confuses people all the time. InessaWellness.com was my clinical practice. So, and then when we launched Inessa as a supplement brand, I always wanted that ethos and that kind of the feeling that we started off as a clinical practice, so we still operate as a clinical practice first and a supplement company second. We're not there just to sell product. Right. We're there to help support people in their health journeys, and we point people out all the time for whether it's refer back to a doctor or go and see a nutrition professional for kind of better advice, or someone else makes a liquid omega-3, for example, that would be a better fit for you. You should go there and have that, for example. And we were doing that with the magnesium all the time. And I thought to myself, okay, if we are going to do magnesium, we're going to have to do something a little bit different from what's already in market. So I thought to myself, what are the types of magnesium that I normally work with, and what are the types of magnesium that other practitioners work with? And the ones that kind of I personally like working with, there are 3 types. So magnesium citrate is like your gold standard. So it's a solid, good quality, bioavailable magnesium. That one kind of I would use for a wide range of applications. And then magnesium threonate, which is really quite hard to find because it's quite expensive. It's a very expensive ingredient, so you won't find it in very many products. And if you do, you have to really hunt for it. But magnesium threonate has been shown to cross the blood-brain barrier. So it's really good for calming the mind, and it's really good to have before bed. It's good if you have stress or anxiety. That particular form of magnesium has been well studied and been shown to kind of help with a whole host of mental health issues, and also just with calming and helping to improve sleep. And then the last one that I put in was magnesium bisglycinate, and that one also helps with calming the nervous system. Is a really, really nice, very bioavailable product, but also has the advantage of it doesn't cause gastrointestinal upset. So magnesium quite often can cause kind of loose stools in some people, and a bit of bloating in people who are sensitive. And so the way that we've balanced out that product has made sure that actually I don't think we've had any complaints about it from people with sensitive tummies at all. So we've balanced it out with those 3. Because magnesium, full stop, it works on a whole host of things throughout the body. But those specific ones are quite good for calming. And that's what we were getting asked for a lot of the time. It won't make you sleepy, for example. It won't actually if you dig in the morning, it's not going to make you sleepy. Because actually magnesium is really important in energy production, for example. Our body uses it to convert the food that we eat into usable energy. So it's important from that perspective. But if you take magnesium, I love to take ours just before bed. I take 2 capsules about 30 minutes before bed. It does help calm the mind, and it helps induce a much better quality sleep.
Interesting. I must start doing that. That sounds like a very good way, because there are really nice. Those times when you're lying in bed and thinking, why am I not sleeping? Why can't I get to sleep? That sort of thing. Yeah. Aliza, thank you so much for coming on the show and talking to us about your work. And I think it's great the way you're doing business as well, that it's really customer focused and giving value to the people who are coming to you for nutrition and health advice, as well as the supplements that you make. You said it's InessaWellness.com. Yeah. Is that's correct. And that's the place to go to, but people can find you presumably on social media as well.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I mean, I just think it's great what you're doing. I think it's a great story as well, how you came into this. And I think it's fantastic that you were able to sort out your own health problems. I always love hearing how people have taken their health into their own hands and they've got there, they've done it. So thank you for sharing that. And here's to the business doing, very well into the future. And may you help many, many more people with your work. So thanks so much again.
Thanks so much. Thanks for having me on, JJ.
Oh, don't you just love it when you meet good people doing good things in the world? And remember, InessaWellness.com is the website to check out. And sadly, we're at the end of the show. I hope you'll join me here again on Alchemy 101 and UK Health Radio for more inspirational guests another time. If you're listening to the podcast version of this show and you like what you hear, do subscribe and share this episode. It would be amazing if you could leave a review too. Talking of subscriptions, why not subscribe to our sister publication Health Triangle magazine for even more health and well-being news and information. That's at ukhealthradio.com/magazine. And I mustn't forget to mention the show that I co-host with Dr. Mark Goulston here on UK Health Radio. It's called Hurt Less, Live More. Tune in there for weekly, open and often raw but uplifting conversations with more fantastic guests. For now, though, it's goodbye from me and that nightingale.